weight can feel like an uphill battle. That's because no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you exercise or how much you diet, you will not lose those last 15 pounds that you're struggling with until you remove the processed items from your diet, those containing salt, oil, and sugar. I'm gonna go over 7 reasons exactly why these substances are keeping you from reaching your weight loss goals. I'm Carly, I'm a plant-based nutritionist. For anybody who's new here, I enjoy making videos on whole food, plant-based living, particularly as it pertains to weight loss. So the first reason that salt, oil, and sugar are going to be detrimental to your weight loss efforts is because they scramble your satiety mechanisms. They completely mess up your body's ability to register when it's had enough calories or you've had enough to eat. So regardless of how much you consume, for the most part, you are going to continue to feel like you need to keep ingesting calories. This can be particularly confusing with things like oil because it is the most calorically dense food in our food supply. When you eat, let's say, an avocado, you get all those healthy fats packaged with a ton of fiber and protein and all those other vitamins and minerals that are perfectly designed and packaged in that food. So your body is attuned to breaking up portions of those items and taking what it needs and removing what it doesn't need or what it can't break down. Now, when it comes to avocado oil, it's a completely different story because all of the minerals, all of the vitamins, well, for the most part, sometimes there's a little vitamin E, but other than that, all of the fiber, the protein, the carbohydrates, everything that is beneficial to human health has been removed from the avocado to make this avocado oil. Not only that, but if you ingest it, your body is so much more capable of absorbing those fat calories and storing them efficiently, as opposed to having to first remove the fat from all of that fiber and all that protein and all those other items in that packaged food. I don't want to say packaged food because it makes it sound like a convenience product, but in that package of the avocado, I'm saying. So when it has to remove the fat from all those other items in that food, it's absorbed much more slowly and gradually. So your body can utilize those calories as energy as opposed to just quickly storing them all as fat. So how this pertains to your satiety mechanisms is the fact that you absorb those calories so quickly that your body literally does not have time to send the message to your brain saying that I've had a ton of calories, please shut off the hunger drive. Instead, you will continue feeling hungry because your brain will not get that message in time and you'll continue to overconsume. So number 2, I kind of already went over this, is that these calories are rapidly absorbed. So we can talk about a different chemical. Sugar, for instance, is absorbed very rapidly by the body when it is taken in its concentrated form. But when you eat a beet, for instance, instead of sugar from a sugar beet, you're getting that sugar in a packaged form with all those other molecules, all those other nutrients. So you're getting the fiber, you're getting the protein, you're getting the carbohydrate, you're getting everything that comes with it instead of just the concentrated carbohydrate. When you absorb a candy bar, for instance, your body is so efficient at breaking down those constituents in the candy bar that they will rapidly enter your bloodstream and thus triggering an excess of insulin to be released into the bloodstream to ultimately usher the glucose into the cells. So that induces more weight gain because the more excess insulin in the bloodstream, the more you're gonna store calories. Number 3, they are very high in calories. Oil is literally the densest food on the planet when it comes to calories. These are 4,000 calories per pound of food. That's twice as much calories as you need in one day. 1 serving of oil is a tablespoon. 1 tablespoon is 120 calories. That is an obscene amount of energy, and we will never, ever, ever be able to utilize 120 calories in an instant. The reason why these foods are so pro-inflammatory and in turn causing more weight gain is because they are absorbed within 3 to 5 minutes into the bloodstream, as opposed to like 3 to 5 hours with whole natural foods. So your body doesn't have time to register and utilize them properly. So it causes all sorts of havoc, leading to weight gain. So number 4 is really important because salt, sugar, and oil actually perpetuate cravings. So regardless of the type of food that you are consuming these in, they will still register the same way in the brain and therefore create this mechanism. It used to be a survival tactic that we would utilize to find food that was high in caloric density, so we'd be able to continue reproducing. So in nature, if you would come across foods, very rarely, that were high in fats, let's say. So if you came across avocados when they were in season, or if you were finally able to crack open some nuts, you would get very minute amounts of fats. But now that we can go to our local grocery store and get an entire bag worth of salted, roasted, oil-drenched nuts, you are much more likely to develop cravings and addictions towards these foods. Let's talk about what a craving is. So basically, when you consume one of these highly concentrated foods, the salt, sugar, or oil, it releases a certain amount of dopamine in your brain. So the higher the caloric density of a food, the more dopamine that's released. The quicker these calories enter your bloodstream, the more dopamine that's released. So what this does is it allows your brain to remember where you found a certain food so you can make your way back there and get some more of it. So while you're away from that area where you found this food, your brain wants you to anticipate getting more of that food so you can induce your likelihood of survival and reproduction. So in nature, this was all great. But now that we can walk to any street corner to our nearest convenience market and buy these foods in highly concentrated forms, it's created a heck of an obesity epidemic. So that craving is simply your brain's anticipation to have more of that food. But the good news is, the longer you stay away from these foods, the more and more and more time you'll have in between those cravings, and the more and more subtle they will become. So eventually, within 30 to 90 days of removing these substances from your diet completely, you will not have any more cravings. And that is a very liberating feeling. I used to be obsessed with Mike and Ike's, Reese's peanut butter cups, and those peanut butter M&Ms. That was literally my diet for a good year or two of my adult life. It's so embarrassing to admit that, but that's how dangerous these foods are. I grew up in a family that consistently provided sweets and fatty foods for a job well done, or that's how we showed love and comfort. It was just a constant routine that every time I got my allowance for doing my chores for the week, we would take a trip to the grocery store and I would buy the biggest bag of candy I could possibly get my hands on. So I know exactly how detrimental these foods can be to your health and happiness. The 5th reason why salt, oil, and sugar tend to make people gain weight is because it reduces your ability to taste and ultimately appreciate whole natural foods. So of course, a sweet potato and a bunch of steamed broccoli is going to taste crappy to you when you are constantly eating Pringles and peanut butter with tons of sugar and salt. You need to give your body that time to adapt back to its equilibrium so you can again appreciate these foods because they're totally worth it. Soon, broccoli will taste salty. A can of tomato sauce will be all the acidity you need to fulfill those sodium cravings. And sodium is found naturally in foods. As a matter of fact, greens and vegetables hold the highest sodium of the majority of the whole foods of the plant-based kingdom. So that's where we are intended to get our sodium because it is in fact something that we need to survive in small quantities. They recommend about 1,500 milligrams per day, but many experts even suggest getting less than that. And that just so happens to be the exact amount you will get from eating a day's worth of whole natural foods. Broccoli, for instance, contains about 44 milligrams. So that should give you some idea, some ballpark of how to incorporate more sodium or less sodium into your diet. So the 5th reason why these foods tend to induce weight gain is because of binge eating. How many times have you had just one Cheeto or one cracker? It's a joke in our society. You can't have just one because these foods induce binge eating. You will not just have one. You will have handfuls, and you may go back for seconds, thirds, and fourths, and not be able to control yourself. That's what's really undermining about these foods, is their ability to completely take control of our rationality and our desire to properly care for ourselves. So if you want to reduce the likelihood of weight gain, you're gonna wanna remove these foods. Number 7 is super interesting because salt, oil, and sugar are all addictive. So do you remember earlier when I was discussing the dopamine that gets released every time we eat some of these foods? Well, that same pathway is activated when you ingest alcohol, caffeine, heroin, prescription drugs. This is a level of addiction, and as far-fetched as that may seem, it's the reality. And the sooner you can see it for what it is, the sooner you'll be able to really, truly get off these foods for good. Now, knowing that they're addictive, that entails a withdrawal of some sort. So these foods will induce a withdrawal reaction when you stop eating them. And it's not pleasant, but it's doable. It's not as extreme as quitting smoking, let's say, but it's on the same level. You're going to experience a lot of the same discomfort. Your brain is going to constantly revisit the idea of, maybe I should just quit tomorrow instead. Maybe I should have just one more for lunch. I had such a hard day. I should go home and have X, whatever your pleasure. Like I said, mine was candy. I had a big sweet tooth. So when I decided enough was enough, I have enough dental issues, I have enough problems losing weight, I am not gonna eat any more of this candy. When I finally made that decision for myself, it took years to actually completely get off of sugar, to the point where I was able to read food labels and make sure it was not anywhere in my diet. And that's something I seriously suggest, is removing foods that you wouldn't normally consider as containing salt, oil, or sugar. But let's take granola, for example. Perfectly healthy, right? But it's not. It contains coconut oil, maple syrup, brown sugar, salt. It has all 3 of them in here. You will never find all 3 of those items in nature, salt, oil, and sugar, in one package, because we're not meant to be stimulated on that level. When we eat food, it's supposed to just be a natural part of our day. It's not supposed to uplift us. It's not supposed to get us going. It's supposed to just allow us to endure. I mean, yes, my food is very enjoyable. I love breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Absolutely, I look forward to them, but they're not constantly on my mind. I'm not constantly craving my next meal. So I think the sooner we take into account the highly addictive properties of these foods and their ability to act on our innate pleasure centers, the more we can understand why this is a real problem and why you're having such a hard time removing these from your diet, regardless of the fact that they're literally ubiquitous in our food supply. But we'll get to that in another video. So I hope this information was helpful. Sorry if it was a little lengthy, but it's such an intriguing topic for me, and I think it's so important for people to learn the truth about these detrimental foods and what they're doing to your health, particularly when it comes to weight gain. So make sure you give this video a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.